Hi everybody, my name is Alex. I'm a Mexican guy and I'm gonna be your new Spanish teacher. In this episode, we're gonna talk about, in this video, we're gonna talk about muy or mucho, muy and mucho. So, Pablito es mucho grande or Pablito es muy grande. Juanito es mucho rico or Juanito es muy rico. And the last example, Sandra tiene muy juguetes or Sandra tiene muchos juguetes. Well, let's get started. Foreign people have problems with muy and mucho. Why? Because they have practically the same meaning for foreign people, but they are used in different ways. And muy and mucho are used to express that there's a lot of something into something. So, for instance, if you speak Spanish, that you already do, I hope, then it's gonna be pretty easy to assimilate muy. Why? Because muy is always translated as very. For instance, Samantha is very intelligent. How would that be translated in Spanish? That would be Samantha es muy inteligente. Muy inteligente. Muy is an adverb. It's always used in front of a verb. So there is only one form of muy. It has no plural, it has no feminine or masculine, it has only one form, muy. Now, muy can be used in two circumstances. The first one, muy plus an adjective. An adjective. So that means that if you, like the first example, I said Samantha is very intelligent. So we used the first structure, muy plus an adjective. That means that in Spanish, that would be Samantha es muy inteligente. And the second structure would be muy plus an adverb such as slow, fast, etc. So, how would you say in Spanish, you're going very fast? You are going very fast. Tú vas muy rápido, rápido. Or you speak very fast. In Spanish, that would be tú hablas muy rápido. So there are two structures, as in English, for muy. Muy plus an adjective. It doesn't matter the adjective. It can be alto, chaparro, fuerte, gordo, pesado, difícil. Or muy plus an adverb. Despacio, rápido, etc. Now, muy was the easy part. Now we're going into mucho. Mucho has feminine, has masculine, has singular, and has plural. Mucho can mean a lot of things, such as a lot, many, much, plenty, etc. So there are two types also of structures of mucho in Spanish. The first one, mucho plus a noun. So, as I said, mucho needs to concord, needs to have the same gender and or the same quantity, like if it's a singular or plural noun, it needs to concord with the noun. So, let's say that we're talking about apples, manzanas in Spanish. If we wanted to say there are a lot of apples in Spanish, what would we say? Mucho, mucha, muchas, or muchos. If it is feminine in Spanish, manzanas is a feminine noun. So it can be mucha and it can be muchas. Now we're talking about apples, so it's a plural noun. So it would be in Spanish muchas instead of mucha because it's a feminine noun and also it's a plural noun. So we would say hay muchas manzanas. There are a lot of apples. If you want to sound like more native, like a native speaker, I would recommend you to say, many people, well, Spanish teachers would say you that if you're talking about, I don't know, cars, and you want to say there are a lot of cars, you need to say, you must say, hay muchos carros. You need to talk in plural, but that's not true. Well, it is if you want to pass a test, but if you want to sound more like a native person, we say, hay mucho carro, or hay muchos carros. It doesn't matter, it's the same. Hay mucho carro means that there are a lot of cars, and hay muchos carros, which is more correct, means there are a lot of cars. So you can say both of them, but if you want to sound like more correct, more polite, maybe less informal, you should always say muchos carros. Now the second structure, mucho, as an adverb. Now we're gonna use a verb plus mucho. The first example would be hace mucho frío. Hace mucho frío means that it is very cold here or anywhere you want to say. Hace mucho frío en Canadá. Canada is very cold. Now you would say, why are we using mucho instead of muy in this sentence? Because as I said before, very can always be translated as muy. But if you translated this sentence like literally, that would be Canadá es muy fría. We can say that, but when we're referring to weather things, weather stuff, we're going to use the verb hace to make, like we would be literally being saying in English, Canada makes a lot of cold. That's how we say it in Spanish. So if you want to talk about temperature and weather, we're gonna use the verb hacer. Now we're going to the second structure, verb plus mucho. Verb plus mucho. If we're talking about, I don't know, having, tener, I have a lot of work. In Spanish, that would be tengo mucho trabajo. Tengo mucho trabajo. There's a lot of food in the table. On the table, I'm sorry. There's a lot of food on the table. We would say it in Spanish, hay mucha, because we're talking about food, and food is a feminine noun in Spanish. So instead of mucho is mucha. Hay mucha comida en la mesa. Or she has a lot of patience. We would say paciencia. Well, first, paciencia in Spanish is a feminine noun. So we're gonna use, instead of mucho, we're gonna use mucha. We would say ella tiene mucha paciencia. Ella tiene mucha paciencia. Now, if we say trabajo mucho, what's the difference between this sentence and mucho trabajo? Mucho trabajo, well, having, tener mucho trabajo means that someone has a lot of work. And trabajo mucho, first, the verb trabajo is the conjugated form of the verb trabajar, to work. So, trabajo means I work. Trabajo mucho. I work a lot. Mucho. And mucho trabajo means a lot of work. Also, there's this word in Spanish. instead of mucho, we would say muchísimo. That would mean like more than mucho, more than a lot. We're trying to emphasize the quantity. There's a lot of something, more than a lot of something. So we would say muchísimo. And the same rules as mucho will apply into this adverb, or this particle. So how would you say there's more than a lot of apples? We would say hay muchísimas, because we're talking about plural noun and we're talking about a feminine noun. So hay muchísimas manzanas. If we're trying to say there's more than a lot of work, we would say hay muchísimo trabajo. Muchísimo trabajo. Like the word, well, a synonym of this word can be demasiado in Spanish. Well, this is it for today's lesson. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please give your like to the video and subscribe. I hope this was helpful, and if you'd like to support the channel, don't forget that there's a link below to my Patreon's profile, in which you can support the channel by donating the amount that you'd like, and in return you're gonna get rewards such as, depending on the donation, you can get to choose the next video, or you can get private lessons. So thank you for watching, and nos vemos hasta la próxima. Adiós.